Imagine for a moment that you are a 65-year-old man. You worked your entire life as a doorman, you're retired at this moment in time, and you've actually been such an upstanding citizen throughout the course of your life that you are one of the rare individuals within the city limits of New York City who's actually licensed to carry a firearm. And as you're walking in your own neighborhood at 2 o'clock in the morning on a late summer evening, another man approaches you. This person has a lengthy criminal history, 15 arrests, a history of mental health issues, violent arrests, by the way, are included in that history, and this man intends to rob you. He's coming for everything that you have, but you luckily are carrying a firearm on you. You draw the gun, you tell him to back off, give him a warning, but he charges at you anyway with a dark object in his hand, so you fire a shot in order to defend yourself, and that person is killed. Now, of course, New York has very sketchy self-defense laws. It essentially almost always favors the criminal, but one of the things that actually helps you is the whole entire thing was caught on surveillance video. And in fact, when the police show up, you're not arrested for the homicide because there was no crime committed in you killing that mugger. And in fact, it gets referred to the Queens District Attorney, and the Queens District Attorney decides, you know what? This homicide, totally legitimate, totally justified under Queens and New York City's self-defense statutes. So you think you're all good. You think there's no problem. But the thing is, even though you're licensed to carry a gun and you have several firearms in your possession that are licensed, the revolver that you had in your possession at that moment in time is not included in one of those licensed firearms. So what you have right here is a paperwork violation on the gun that you, according to the Queens District Attorney, justifiably used to defend yourself. But you know what? You're a 65-year-old man. You were keeping up on your paperwork for some of your firearms. You just happened to miss the paperwork on this one and maybe a few others in your home. So you would think no big deal at all whatsoever. But then the police kick in your door. They have a search warrant and they decided that they're going to go through your entire place looking for firearms that, again, don't meet the paperwork requirements for the city of New York. And all of a sudden, at age 65, after you justifiably defended yourself in a case where somebody who is a violent repeat offender, who is released time and time again, given free pass time and time again, you're facing 25 years. Again, basically a life sentence at that age, and the prosecution is showing you absolutely no mercy. They're demanding that your bail gets doubled because apparently you're the serious ongoing threat to society, not the person with mental health issues, not the person who is trying to rob you, who has a lengthy violent criminal history, and ultimately, due to the lengthy dragged out process in your self-defense case, you are forced to take a guilty plea to one of the 26 weapons charges that you were facing, and now you're going to prison at age 67 for 4 years. 4 years in prison for defending yourself and having a paperwork violation. Well, that's exactly what happened to Chris Foner, and this is absolutely ridiculous, and it's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
Yeah, and the incident happened on Wednesday. 65-year-old Charles Foner will not be charged with homicide. What he will be charged with is 26 counts of criminal possession of a weapon. Now, while police say he does have permits to carry a firearm, the gun that he used in the shooting on Wednesday was not one of those guns that he has a permit for.
You know, there was a case out in the state of Texas not too long ago. We may have talked about it in a video or at least referenced it, where an illegal immigrant actually hired a person to stage a robbery so that they could get one of those victim temporary protections from deportation orders under the Biden administration. However, a good Samaritan in and around the area saw an armed robbery occurring, and he decided to try to save those individuals by shooting said armed robber, ultimately killing said armed robber. Now, of course, this robber was not actually intending to harm the people that he was pointing the gun at. He was just trying to get caught on surveillance video in order to have a case, in order for those illegal aliens to stay in the United States of America under a victim status. But the Texas government looked at the facts of this case and said, you know what, it was perfectly reasonable for him to assume that this was a legitimate robbery, so he faced no homicide charges. However, in addition to that, the person who actually tried to defend the two people from who he perceived to be their armed robber, he was out on parole, and one of his conditions of being out on parole was that he was not allowed to be in possession of a firearm. So what do you think happened in this particular scenario? Did the Texas government go after him and try to lock him away for a lengthy period of time? No, absolutely not. They confiscated his firearm and basically told him, look, you try to defend somebody, but for you trying to act in the defense of somebody else, we would not know about these charges, so we're going to give you a bit of a pass on this situation. That's how the state of Texas, a state concerned with Second Amendment rights, a state that understands self-defense and defense of others, treated somebody who had a technical violation only discovered after a heroic action. Well, you go over to Queens, New York, where you have a 65-year-old upstanding citizen, and the Queens District Attorney, Melinda Katz, decided that he was deserving of no grace. She threw the book at him, was trying to lock him up for 25 years, which again, at age 65, would have been a death sentence for the crime of defending himself against a mugger, which even the Queens District Attorney acknowledged was 100% a justifiable shooting, with one of his guns that was unregistered, even though he had multiple registered guns and was licensed to carry in the city of New York.
Well, the man charged with shooting and killing a would-be mugger returned to court today. Charles Foner is now facing 26 counts of weapons possession after investigators discovered an arsenal of guns, including AK-47s and body armor, in his apartment in Queens. Those charges are in addition to the charge of using an unlicensed gun when Foner allegedly shot and killed 32-year-old Cody Gonzalez when Gonzalez tried to rob him.
You know, you live in a crazy, hellish society that does not respect the Second Amendment, that does not respect the humanity of the individual, that does not care about the law abiding. When your local news media is doing a report like this and they're talking about how this guy had many unregistered guns at his home, even though again he was one of the few people who went through the extensive process of having registered guns and again a carry permit in the city of New York, he just didn't technically meet the qualifications for each and every one of his firearms. And they talk about the 26 firearm related charges that this individual is facing, again, because of an incident where he was the victim of a crime and defended himself against said crime, and he defended himself so perfectly according to New York law, they couldn't even charge him with a homicide, which is damn near honestly impossible in my opinion, because Jose Alba also defended himself against a criminal repeat offender and it was caught on video, and he was at least charged in the city of New York, even if those charges were dropped later. But this guy did everything so perfectly, and yet they raided his house anyway, and yet they went through all of his stuff in order to find each and every ticky-tack violation they possibly could for somebody that they knew 100% was a law-abiding, upstanding citizen who again just happened to use a firearm to defend himself that specifically wasn't licensed, even though he had licenses for many of his other firearms. That is how insane the culture is here in the city of New York, and unfortunately he did not get to face a jury of his peers. Unfortunately, we did not get an incident of jury nullification, and the reason for that is because Melinda Katz District Attorney's Office charged him so aggressively, pursued such a high bail, including a doubling of the bail in his particular case, that he was afraid that he was going to lose his life in prison as they were pursuing 25 years. And again, I will point out, the person who attacked him, lengthy criminal history of mental health problems, was somebody who is known to be a serious, ongoing threat to others, and yet when he was arrested for his many crimes, what were the results of his case? What did the prosecution pursue against him? A same-day automatic release due to New York State's bail reform. This is the madness that we have to suffer under. That guy, that suspect, the person who was killed justifiably attacking a senior citizen trying to rob him, he should have never been out on the streets in the first place. He should have never been free to attack people, not just because of his criminal history, but because of his mental health history. Remember, the standard is for mental health, for you to involuntarily incapacitate someone, is a danger to yourself or others. What do you call somebody with a diagnosed mental health condition that violently attacks others other than a danger to others? And yet New York City and New York State gave that innocent Baba Angel Aladdin, who was just trying to feed his starving family apparently, a free pass. But guess what? Charles Foner got no such luck. From the New York Post, a Queens senior citizen who shot dead a man who tried to rob him will spend 4 years in prison after admitting to toting an unlicensed revolver as his lawyer ripped the city's draconian drug laws. Charles Foner, now aged 67, pleaded guilty to 1 count of criminal weapons possession in a deal to end his case more than 2 years after he fatally shot would-be thief Cody Gonzalez, who charged him near his Kew Gardens home. The Queens District Attorney's Office chose not to prosecute Foner, a retired doorman, for Gonzalez's killing after he told cops that he defended himself from a mugger who lunged at him late at night holding what looked like to be a knife, which later turned out to be a pen. However, they hit him with a slew of weapons charges for the unlicensed handgun and for the quote-unquote arsenal of illicit handguns, revolvers, and rifles inside his home in the quiet neighborhood. Foner took a plea deal to avoid a trial where he faced 25 years in prison on gun charges that are not hard to prove, said his attorney Thomas Kenneth after Thursday's hearing in Queens Court. Now, we have surveillance video, like I said, that captures the whole thing of the crime, and what we see on the surveillance video is that Cody lunged at Foner after he drew his gun, again giving him no choice but to defend himself. Again, a defense so obvious that even in New York City they could not charge him with that particular crime. But of course, they went after him on the weapons charges. Of course, they pursued that to the fullest extent of the law, and like I said earlier on, they actually pursued a doubling of his bail for these weapons charges when, again, we've seen time and time again in the state of New York, according to bail reform, much more serious crimes don't even get the option to put a bail on somebody. Remember this clip from Anna Kasparian? We just talked about the results of that case.
Dismembering a corpse and hiding a corpse after dismembering it, not bail eligible, not a serious crime. I'm not even kidding, guys. Like, when Joy Behar outlined that case, I was like, she's crazy. This isn't a thing. This isn't real. This isn't real. So I looked it up. It's real, guys. It's real.
So you could dismember murdered corpses in the state of New York, which, by the way, was obviously done by the people who were the murderers, and you get released same day automatically without any bail. And by the way, we got plea deals in those cases too. That was a double murder, if you guys are unaware. And guess what? The top sentence for that case, 22 years. The next sentence, again, for a woman who smashed one of the victims over the head with a meat mallet, that's how they killed this person, and then dismembered the bodies of those two people, she got 11 years in prison. But Foner, Charles Foner, he was facing 25 years. 25 years, not for the homicide, but for the paperwork violation in association with his firearms. Apparently not filling out the proper paperwork, even though he was licensed to carry other guns. He had met that standard in the city and in the state of New York. That was the main issue right there, and that is worse than a double murder and, of course, the covering up of the murder, according to the Queens District Attorney. And in addition to all of that, he is yet to be officially sentenced. Right now, at this moment, he has accepted the plea deal. On January 15th, he will technically be sentenced. The man is 67 years old, never had a violent instance in his entire life, except for this one where somebody tried to rob him and it was caught on surveillance video. They already took all of his firearms, but guess what the Queens District Attorney's Office decided to ask the judge for? They wanted him remanded to custody while awaiting his sentencing. This is the state and the city of New York. Violent repeat offenders, same day automatic release. We're not even going to charge you a single dollar for bail. However, if you're somebody who clearly and obviously defended yourself, in fact, we can make the case that we can't even charge you with the homicide because it's so obvious you defended yourself. We are going to pursue every single avenue of paperwork violations in order to lock your ass up. And again, the man was 67 at the end of the trial, but the sentence would have been dated back to when he was 65. They were trying to put him away until he was 90. Very likely, they were trying to kill this man. Melinda Katz, the Queens District Attorney, was trying to kill a man she knew justifiably defended himself. Now, I don't normally do this on this channel, but linked in the description of this video is going to be all of the contact information for the Queens District Attorney's Office, including their main telephone number, which is 718 286-6000. Now, please don't be crazy. Don't do anything radical with this information. Just call and voice your concerns and demand justice for Charles Foner, because he should not be going to prison for 1 second, let alone 4 years, let alone the 25 years, the death sentence that they were pursuing against him. So yeah, let your voice be heard. This absolutely needs to be undone. The man defended himself. You want to confiscate his guns? I find that to be repugnant, by the way. But if you want to do that because some of them were unlicensed, I guess that's what you got to do. But 4 years in prison? Are we kidding? For a paperwork violation for a guy that you know 100% you would have had nothing on if he hadn't defended himself? The crazy thing about this is the mugger who attacked him, if he would have jammed that pen into him, seriously injured him, he would be out right now. He would have been out the next day. The mugging attempt happened around 2 o'clock in the morning. I guarantee you, had he been successful, had he been caught by the police mugging this elderly man, injuring this elderly man, then Cody Gonzalez would have been out before the sun came up in the city and in the state of New York, because that's how soft on the real criminals they are. But guess what? When you defend yourself, apparently that's the big issue. So again, the number 718-286-6000. Call them, be polite, be courteous. Do not issue any threats or anything like that, but tell them that we demand justice. We demand that this hero be released from any kind of prosecution right now in this moment, because this is a clear and obvious instance of injustice. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the madness over in the city of New York. Till next time.